What's up, Lore Masters? Since I've been getting quite a few requests to do reviews of Star Trek Picard, the specific episodes, as well as my analysis of the entire series, I've decided to put this together and see if you guys want to watch it. Basically, it's a comprehensive breakdown of the various episodes of Star Trek Picard, starting with its very first episode, Remembrance. Let's just get into it. Overall, when looking at the episode as a whole, I really did enjoy it. However, I do think that it's naive not to say that the first dip into the story, the overall 10-episode arc, plays heavily on member berries. To that point, the very first scene we are presented with is that of space, the beautiful expanse, and a wondrous shot of the USS Enterprise D. All of this being ironic, as the focus of the series as a whole won't be on space, nor will it be on the Enterprise D. That said, it's a very gripping way of pulling you in, though. This, of course, leads into a back and forth between Picard and Data, and while many have been upset about this interaction and the de-aging on Data is somewhat subpar, I thought the interaction between them was really well done, and it was a nice callback to the Next Generation. We see Data and Picard bantering back and forth, with Picard teasing Data about having a quote-unquote tell when they are playing poker. Picard stalls the game, admitting that he doesn't want it to end, and then becomes confused when we see Mars right before its ultimate destruction. Then, he wakes up. It was all a dream. While it's arguable that this is not very fitting for the episode itself, it does tie into the overall theme of the series. Stalling, delaying, fighting to keep the game going for as long as you can, both in death and in circumstance. It's something we'll see play over and over in most episodes. So with the destruction of Mars in his dream, he is startled awake, as I said, being greeted by his dog, which he named Number One. And that's sad to me. It makes it seem like he's an old man and has lost all of his friends, and he's about to die alone. A lot of people found it endearing, but I just can't see it. The scene then cuts to two new characters, Daj and her overly make-upped boyfriend. The young woman just got into the Daystrom Institute for Artificial Intelligence as well as working in quantum, even though the Artificial Intelligence department was gutted, as we'll see in the future, and no one was doing really any work regarding it. Okay. Thankfully, we won't get to see the man with the bean hair for long, as he is murdered by a Romulan hit squad.
Of course.
And somehow they're trying to tell us that the Romulans are the bad guys when this is clearly a heroic act, so I don't know what to think of them right now. The men then attempt to give Daj sunglasses and ask her where she is from before she suddenly becomes Superwoman of sorts. Absolutely what the fuck McPoning them. Instead of calling Starfleet or whatever form of Terran police that exist, she gets a vision telling her to seek out Picard. As you do. For me, I found this scene pretty interesting on several levels. In Deep Space Nine, we know there was no crime, no hurt on Earth. So it's crazy to consider that 24 short years later, crime would reintroduce itself and, apparently, just become something a core member world would have to deal with. Additionally, many have balked that she becomes this hero of the ages and claims that Daj is somewhat of a Mary Sue. We'll get into that a bit later. The next scene, after the abysmal title sequence of course, shows us Jean-Luc with his dog at Picard's vineyard. The writers desperately trying to convince us Picard was ever French by having him speak it to his dog. We are then presented with the two best characters in the series, Laurice and Jabon. Two former Tal Shiar agents that Picard saved a while back. Now, I have to be honest, I absolutely love these two. If not for anything else, watching the first few episodes to see these two is worth it. Through dialogue, we learn Picard is about to do an interview and is somewhat nervous about it. The former admiral, oh yeah, they made him an admiral because screw you continuity in TNG, am I right? Would not talk about his separation from Starfleet. He wanted to make it very clear that he didn't want to discuss it. His two caretakers tell him to remember who he was and where he came from. I'll admit it does add some mystery and also reminds us about what had happened in the past. And then we have the interview. A lot of critics have raged about this scene. What occurs is ultimately that Picard is verbally attacked. I'll admit Picard getting yelled at is an ongoing theme of the series, and that's to its detriment. But this interaction specifically, I think, it gives us information about what we have missed in the last 20-some years, including the synthetic revolt of androids on Mars, Men of Iron as they're called, the destruction of Utopia Planitia, the Romulans' plight, and why Picard left Starfleet. It's extremely tense and also shows how Picard has lost all faith in what he dedicated his life to, something that we never thought possible. I also think that the interview took the worst aspects of both CNN and Fox News and combined them for all to see. Critics are upset about this sequence as well, but I sincerely believe that this was really good writing and reminiscent of The Next Generation. It's a subtle nod to the corruption within news media and their need to fashion a story to get views. It was actually pretty awesome. We also find out that there is a type of bigotry towards the Romulans that exists, that the Federation may have qualms with those beneath the Raptor's wings. Many did jump on this, including Red Letter Media, calling it a fundamental change of who the Federation was. I really have to question those who think it's not like the Federation to be bigoted in this manner. I mean, have they ever watched The Next Generation or Deep Space Nine or hell, even Voyager? We will get into how the Federation feels more when Picard approaches Starfleet for help in a later episode, so we're going to put it aside for now. In any respect, Picard states that Starfleet stopped being Starfleet and abruptly leaves the interview. He is approached by Dahj, who asks for his help. She talks about her murder of the 3 unknown assailants, well, unknown to her, and is pretty beat up. There is a conversation between Picard and Dahj that doesn't add much to the story, I'm going to be honest. Somehow Dahj knows Picard and she wears a weird necklace. She is given a room to rest, and while she does, Picard, instead of contacting the authorities, decides to let her sleep it off, because it makes a lot of sense to let her sleep instead of getting officials involved. Picard would have another dream, again with Data and himself. Data is drawing the woman, and Picard realizes that it's Dahj, and that's where he recognizes her. The Starfleet officer that gave his life so that Picard could live had drawn her before. He awakens to find that Dahj is gone, surprise, surprise, and then again, instead of telling the authorities or contacting friends in Starfleet Command, decides to go to the Starfleet archives. The reason why Picard does this is because CBS wanted to show us a ton of Easter eggs. I get that he is supposedly investigating what is going on here, but it's really just a room full of Easter eggs and things that happened in TNG. The scene cuts back to Dahj, who's on the run in the more grimy parts of the city being Paris, and again, somehow a core world, paradise without scarcity, has had scarcity reintroduced. And now there is pain and dirt and grime. This is something I'll delve into at a later point, so we'll just set it aside. She tries to contact her mother, who advises her to go back to Picard. Thing is, she never told her mom about Picard. The mother then begins talking in a methodical and hypnotizing tone, and Dahj begins to hack the Starfleet Command database and find out exactly where Picard is. A dystopian point that will break down in the future. Dahj approaches Picard and tells him she is able to hear people from blocks away and able to do amazing feats. Picard, realizing what may have happened, advises her that she's actually an android. Dahj then somehow miraculously figures out that they had been found and tries to rush Picard to an escape. Of course, when you rush someone who is that old, you get what you bargain for. She also tries to take him onto the roof of a building, which just makes a ton of sense. The duo are attacked by more Romulan shock troops on top of what I believe to be the Starfleet archives. Some claim this is where Dahj shows to be a Mary Sue, Michael Burnham 2.0. I honestly don't believe so, for a couple of reasons. First, Michael's problem is that she is smarter than everyone else and almost universally beloved. Dahj is on her own and trying to figure things out. She also has people that really aren't huge fans of her. Dahj has internal struggles and can be outwitted, while many We Are Starfleet will try to claim this is true of Michael. They're just wrong. Dahj is an android that would have super strength, agility, and other senses. Michael's just a human. To be clear, Dahj is a fleshed out character with reasonable explanations for her talents. And she can be defeated. Michael is none of these things. Case in point, Dahj fights off most all of the Romulans only to have one use an acid pill and cause an explosion. She is killed and Picard knocked out. Picard awakens with his caretakers. Now, in what is, in my mind, a huge plot hole. The explosion is covered up and Picard's not in a hospital. He's on his couch. I'm going to go more into that later, but it honestly makes no sense, even with the explanation of how it happened. We do have a scene with Picard finally deciding to do something about the current crisis, stating that he'd been waiting to die, but no longer. He's going to get back out there. The retired admiral goes to the Daystrom Institute and learns that the division Dahj was to go to was gutted and is now a ghost town. Which is exactly why they were still hiring people. I mean, it just makes sense. The discussion he has with one Agnes, someone who will be important in the future, revolves around if a synthetic with blood and skin can actually exist. She tells him that that type of technology is 1,000 years off. They look at B4, and Agnes says that no other synthetic has ever really been like Data.
Because I was designed to be so human, my brother. I enjoy pleasing humans.
My brother? That has a nice sound to it, Data.
You consider it important to please humans. It's not important? There are many things of importance, some more than others.
Yeah. Agnes discusses how Bruce Maddox came back and how he kept working on the synthetics. She goes on to say that an advanced android would have to be created from Data's neural network, and after the ban of all synthetics, Maddox would disappear and they just wouldn't have the technology. Not to mention that Data is dead, so getting one of his neurons would be impossible. Oh, and also, if you use his neural network, you have to make twins, which doesn't make a ton of sense necessarily, but whatever. The scene continues on, and we meet Daj's identical twin, Soji. Oh, and we meet Narek, the cliché Tal Shiar I'm a bad guy. And then, the reveal that they are on a Borg cube, which had been spoiled a lot before, which is a shame. This is probably the best reveal I've ever seen. I wish they had never told us about the Borg cube. And with that, roll to credits. Ultimately, this was a solid episode. It had member berries, introduced new characters, and plot threads. We know the universe has changed, and we are teased on how it's changed, but not told just yet. It's a pretty solid start. For me, it was an 8 out of 10. But what are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below, and if you want a full episode of breakdowns like this one, let me know that too. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next Lore Reloaded.